Hey friends, welcome to the Divorce Clarity Studio on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, podcasts, and TV. Before we begin, I invite you to take a breath and arrive fully, just as you are. If you're navigating divorce and feeling overwhelmed, confused, or painfully alone, you're in the right place. I'm Lisa Lisser, founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transitions. On this show, I offer clear information, grounded education, and soul-centered guidance to help you understand the divorce process from start to finish without shame, fear, or overwhelm. Each episode, I sit down with trusted experts across the divorce landscape, legal, financial, emotional, and relational, and we gently demystify what's happening, answer the questions you may be holding quietly, and support you in making decisions from clarity rather than crisis. The Divorce Clarity Studio is here to help you feel less alone so you can move through divorce with intention and care and begin to imagine what comes next. Today, I am excited to welcome Jon Bassford to the studio. Jon brings both expertise and humanity to the conversation, and I trust that you'll feel as we talk, our show will touch you in ways you didn't expect. The show is called Finding Your Co-Parenting Secret, and that's what we get stuck in. So often it feels like making co-parenting work is a mystery, and we are stuck in old patterns. So here's my guest, Jon Bassford, the author of The Co-Parenting Secret. It's not about you. It's a best-selling guide to building respectful, child-centered parenting partnerships after separation. He's a TEDx speaker, a leadership and operations consultant, and a man who blends personal experience and professional insight to help parents move beyond conflict, beyond ego, and beyond control. He's been co-parenting his son for nearly a decade and now helps others do the same with honesty, humor, and a focus on what matters most, the kids. Jon, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
It's my pleasure. So I brought you on to talk about co-parenting because this is one of the biggest mysteries about divorce. Post-divorce, it's hard. I've been coaching co-parents for a really long time, or maybe it just feels like a long time because it is such hard work. So you are now a thought leader on the subject. You wrote a book. We all want to know, what's your story? How did you get into this business?
Sure. So, I was product of divorce growing up myself, growing up in the Bible Belt of the Midwest. And, I had your typical co-parenting scenario, right? You live with mom who had all emotional, mental, school, health, every type of custody you could think of. And dad got every other weekend. And that's how I grew up. And obviously, no one goes into marriage thinking they're going to get divorced. And it happened with me and my ex-wife, but we decided to do things differently, and we really set the intention from the very, very beginning of how we wanted to do it. And a lot of it was, obviously the focus on our son, and some of it was focused on our families. We were both very close to each other's families, and our falling out of love and getting divorced, we didn't want that to affect everything else. How the book came about really was what people would know kind of about our history of being married, and they'd all say to me, "Hey, how's co-parenting going with your ex?" I was like, "It's actually great. We could write a book." And after a number of years, I got tired of saying that we should write a book, and I actually went to my ex-wife and said, "Hey, would you want to do this with me?" And she just didn't want to do that. I was like, "All right, well, fine. I'll just, can I use you for help and advice a little bit as I'm going through this?" So, ended up being a team effort with both my current wife and ex-wife and myself, but I was the primary author, of course. But just really just wanted to tell our story, tell my story, and what I often talk about is helping people, flip the script on what it means to co-parent. I
Okay,
think.
so
Yep,
we're gonna get there, but you shared so much information that I want to just deconstruct it a little bit. Okay, so you shared that your childhood, you're a kid of divorce, and you grew up in the old model where mom has most of the time, dad has every other weekend. But mom also has most of the emotional baggage. She carries that weight and the everyday. So what was a struggle that you felt maybe growing up or seeing your mom in that scenario that sort of moved you when it came to be a part of your life to want to do it differently?
Yeah, I mean, something that my dad said when he left was, I'll be a better part-time dad. And as a grown up, as a dad, what that really came to mean to me was there's less responsibilities, therefore there's less expectations on me, therefore I'll seem
Mm,
better. And I don't say that obviously to bash my dad and anything, but for me, when it came to being a parent, that if I was given the easy out, I would take it too. And I didn't want an easy out. I wanted to be a part of school pickup and sports and sick days and healthy days and uh, you know, kid coming home from school upset because they got bullied, right? Like, you don't obviously don't want your kid to be bullied, but I wanted to be a
right.
part of the discussion, right? I wanted to be a part of his daily life, and that's really something that drove me to do something different.
That's great because it just shows that you sort of grew up with one experience and you realize that there were pieces missing for you as a kid that you don't want your own child to experience. And that takes a big awareness because it's much easier to fall into the pattern that I'm just going to do it the same way. Whether you want to or not, you may wind up doing it the same way. And so taking that mindset shift and living into it is a really powerful message. A lot of parents say, dads who may be working more hours than mom and they want to be involved. They want 50-50, but they're not home as much as mom and mom doesn't believe that dad can be home as much. Like, where will that happen? How will that work? So give us a little inspiration. How did it work in your life in order for you to actually live into that purpose that you mentioned?
Yeah, so it's a little easier now. I'm self-employed. I'm a consultant, so I work from home. But in the beginning, I wasn't, and I made some shifts in my life. There's I went to my boss and said, "Hey, look, working out is also something very, very important to me, being physically healthy and working out. And for me to fit work in, fit my son in, fit working out in, like I changed my schedule. And I changed my life to make sure that my son was a priority in that, but yet I could still take care of the self-care that I needed to. And so really was just shuffling around my life. And again, luckily I've had some jobs where I've had the flexibility in my schedule and how I worked. And but it took some, I had to go to people, right, and say, hey, look, I need to change something for me, for my son, and luckily had some supportive people in my life.
Yeah, that's a really incredible message because, on the one hand, you have this conflict in a family, and maybe it's because one parent isn't around as much. And then that when that parent suggests 50-50, there becomes like an emotional trigger there. But what my experience has been similar to yours, that where there's a will, there's a way. When a dad says they want to be part of their child's life, and they mean it, then they make it happen. And it requires action steps. It requires different mindset. It requires saying, okay, I may have traveled 3 out of 4 weeks a month when I was married, but now I'm not going to travel on the days that I have the kids. So people need to understand that that shift can happen, and it happened in my life. I know, like, my ex traveled a lot, but when he took 50-50, he decided that all of a sudden that schedule could shift. That's not to say I wasn't slightly resentful that it didn't happen while we were married, but he stepped up for the kids, and that's important.
And we all choose our priorities, right? And sometimes if we want to make our kids a priority, especially in a divorce situation, then have them more, something else has to drop off, and you got to
Yeah.
figure out where that balance is.
Yeah. So tell us, do you have like a specific methodology or a system that, you promote in your book or you educate about in your book that can sort of guide people through the pitfalls of co-parenting?
It's really all based around the subtitle of the book. It's not about you. When you think about conflict, conflicts, scheduling conflicts, religious upbringing, different things that really come up and create some strife between exes and co-parenting. It's usually because one or both parents are thinking about themselves, their interests, their time, their money, whatever it may be, and not the kid. And so, if you really go approach it with keeping the mind on the child, I think a great example of this is grandma and grandpa time. If my um, ex's parents want my son on my time, I don't view that as my time. I view that as my son's time with his grandparents. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter which one's blood related to him through me or his mom, right? Like his time with a grandparent, not my time versus my ex's time. And so that's and it comes up a lot of times, birthdays and family stuff. And but if you really just focus on the kid and it being their time with people in their life, it's a lot easier to say yes.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like what you're sharing is that it's not my time or your time. It's our child's time. And so when I hear people say, "Well, I need to know what's going on with my child every second of the day," or "I need to talk to them every night to make sure that they're safe," when they're with the other parent, like your child is with their parent, and that's okay. And so we need to release some of that territorial feeling, territoriality, because it's about our kids and not having our kids feel the stress of having to choose, or what if I spend a minute more with daddy? Is mommy going to be upset? And how will I communicate then to, our kids want to make us happy. And so that's a big piece of it. If we're talking about grandparents, like our grandparents make our kids happy. So that's a piece where we should be able to not be so territorial.
Yeah, and I think, the old model is just, things happen in our divorce, we split up. I'm supposed to be angry and mean and nasty. And, you know, a lot of, being to be able to accept it's not about you. It's a lot about letting go of ego, letting go of settling past scores, and letting go of
Mhm.
control. I mean, those are absolutely essential to do that, and just going into a relationship, a co-parent relationship, where you're intentional about how you want to create this and how you're going to act and what you expect from each other goes a long way when things hit the head, right? Like whatever analogy you want to use here. When problems start happening, going into it with positive intentions and everyone's working for the same positive thing of good, healthy kids helps
Yeah.
you get through it.
Yeah, definitely. I've been working with the BEH2O co-parenting methodology. BE stands for the metal beryllium, which is strong and flexible, and water is soft and can be very adaptable and can make great change. So, with that image in mind, we try and train parents to be strong but flexible, because we need to adapt. We need to move around the obstacles. And so that's what we are hoping for. And it sounds like your methodology is doing that with its own um, vision, right? And it's about the mindset shift. It's not about settling scores. It's about our kids.
And obviously, it's easier when both parents are coming into this with the same intentions, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, my ex and I, like, we didn't intend to create this fairy tale that's kind of emerged, right? We just wanted things. We wanted to do things differently. We wanted our families to see things differently and experience this differently than the traditional path. And that intentionality is so important. How you show up every day, how you communicate with the other person. Open and honest communication has been absolutely crucial to our relationship. There are times that one of us gets offended or upset by the other one, but that's when we stop texting and emailing and jump on a phone call or meet in person.
Yeah.
And we do the things that um, you just need to create any kind of positive relationship. Just because it's your ex-wife, your ex-husband, doesn't mean that stops, right? Like we would never
Yeah.
handle the same way we handle conflicts in X situation at work. we would never do that, but yet they're our exes, so we're allowed. We don't have to have them in our life anymore, but you do. You are
Yeah.
stuck with them, right? For better or for worse, forever when you have a kid,
Yeah.
and you got to find the best way to deal with that.
And what you said something really, really clear and really in alignment with my training, is that if you were in a business, you couldn't let the emotions of the past get in the way of delivering the product that you both are committed to deliver. So I often share with my clients that like the marriage relationship, that one's over. So we got to put that on a shelf. But now you're in a business and the business is raising safe, secure, happy kids. And you both want the same thing for your kids, essentially, which is that they feel safe and secure. So if that's the why for your business model of co parenting, that's going to help you move forward. Because again, like you said, if you are in a business environment, you can't let the emotions get in the way of producing the right product.
Here, think of the work analogy, right? Someone comes to your desk and says, "Hey, can you help me with something, or can you do this or that?" You don't say, "Let me check my schedule," kick them out of your office, wait 3 days, get back to them and say, "I'm just not sure I can make it work." No, you say, "Let me. Of course I will. Let me just make sure I can do it." Right.
Yeah.
And one of the advice I give to parents is when you're in a healthy co-parenting relationship, and sometimes when you're not, but just to start creating one that's a little better, when the other co-parent comes to you and asks for you to do a favor, small little switch, schedule change, whatever it may be, don't just say yes. Say of course. It
Yeah.
really creates this mentality of course you can. Let me just double check that I don't have something going on, but like if I'm available, of course I will take him. If it means that much to you, of course you can have him. Like that just creates this mindset, this tensionality that like we are here together, and as long as there's not a reason not to do it, the answer is always going to be yes.
I love that because that also is lean into yes, which it's so often in divorce, people want to pay back, or people say, I would only do it if she would do it for me, or if he would do it for me, or because of what they did the last time, I'm not going to do it this time. But the person who suffers, the people who suffers are the kids, and they don't need to be involved in that conflict. And what you're sharing is that you found a way in your own life to really make an intentional shift. And so, with that in mind, I want to hold on to my next question, which is tell us about a mistake that you made and how you overcame it. But we're going to go to a quick 30-second break right now. So, at this point, I want to say thanks, everyone. We've got Jon Bassford here, author of The Co-Parenting Secret, and we'll be right back. And we're back with Jon Bassford, author of The Co-Parenting Secret. It's not about you. Okay, Jon. So tell us, was there a big mistake or even a small mistake that you made in your co-parenting journey? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest mistakes I made was in introducing my son to new
Mm,
romantic interests. It didn't happen immediately. That was a situation like that, but there was two situations where, um, you know, I, looking back, I think it's probably rushed. I didn't intend for it to be rushed or thinking, of course, when you're in a new and exciting relationship, you think it's going to last forever, and it isn't always, right. And I that was a there was a stark difference between how I did it and my ex-wife did it.
mhm.
They were very, very methodical. She was dating her partner, I think, for a good 5, 6, 7 months before ever meeting my son, and they waited another 4 or 5, 6 months before they introduced the two kids. They did it in a very, very slow, methodical way, which I think was far healthier. Because I just, before I married my current wife, I was dating a lot coming out of the marriage, and it was during formative years for him. And I think that, not that he met a lot of women by any means, but two. But like having lived with these women and then them leave, I think it did create a little bit of instability for him. And I think that was some trust that I had to earn back with him.
Yeah, so that's one of those challenging things, because so often when people are coming out of a negative romantic experience, they get excited when they start dating again. And if they find someone who feels like this could be real, they want to start introducing right away. And I probably did the same thing. Um, I just, even just telling my kids that I was starting to date, I thought that they should know, and that they were not interested in learning. So, it takes a while for kids to process all of it. So that's one kind of mistake. But I guess what I'd also like you to look at is, between you and your co-parent, like, were there what was like a moment where maybe you had a disagreement and had to handle the conflict in a way that modeled good conflict resolution for your son?
Yeah, it's we've been very, with how intentional we've been. I hate to make this seem like it's a fairy tale, right? Because we left our marriage literally kind of hating each other for a little bit. Um, but it's crazy, right? It sounds crazy that when we came together, we literally both fell into this in a way that just meshed. I don't know if there's ever been conflict. Have there been
Mm,
times where I was offended by something and she was offended by something? We came together, but we've never. I think because we created this open communication strategy and just openness, that we haven't allowed things to get to conflict. Even if we disagree, right? Like there's some give and take. We discuss things over time, but there really isn't this moment where any animosity, discontent, anything came in between us, because
mm,
we are so intentional and created that environment where we're going to be open and talk. Now, on the flip side, is this awkward in the beginning? Hell yeah! Like I mean, there's with your ex, with the family. It takes some time. You have to be willing to sit through the awkwardness of all this, in order
yeah.
to get to that moment where you can look back and say, my ex-wife and I really have never had a real fight about anything in co-parenting, since we've been divorced, and that's an amazing thing to be able to look back and say.
Yeah, that is quite amazing. I have not had that experience, um, because in many situations there's a power differential, or there's a feeling of a power differential, and um, there's the loss of you may have been very close to your ex's family, and now you're not, or there are rules, and how do you communicate? And so, it can make it touchy when the other grandparents are coming into the picture, especially if it's your day, as we spoke a little bit before. But what you're sharing is that you got to switch your mindset, right? Like, once you can shift it, because when behavior flows from mindset, it is much more likely to stick, right? If it's behavior that, like, I'm doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because the agreement says we have to, or I'm doing this, or I'm not doing this because the agreement doesn't say I have to, which is about sharing information that you don't have to share, but it will be helpful if you share.
I think that's a great point, right? Like, we remained open and honest throughout everything. Again, not always easy to tell your ex that, hey, I'm seeing someone seriously, or I'm about to introduce our son to someone I'm seeing. Again, there are certainly awkward moments. There's no doubt about that. But I think just when we said, hey, we're going to do this differently, we're going to communicate differently, we're going to show up differently. Just again, I know a lot of times this can seem like a fairy tale, and we had this perfect marriage and just did the old Hollywood consciously uncouple. We did agree to divorce in marriage company, so we did kind of do that consciously uncouple thing. but there was animosity. We were not friends towards the end, but we put it all aside and we both came to an agreement. So, I'd say to your listeners, no matter where you are, whether you have a positive co-parent relationship or not, just come together with the other person and just say, let's do this different. Let's just have the intention to show up differently, act differently, speak differently, put the animosities behind us. And for those who maybe feel like they don't have a partner in this kind of co-parent relationship, do it for yourself, because hanging
Mm,
on to the animosity and ego and anger and control yourself is only hurting you. You're not hurting them. You probably are hurting them too, but like you're hurting yourself more. And if you just learn to let go and learn to say of course or yes when it doesn't affect your life, doesn't affect anything at all, you're gonna live lighter, and by through that maybe start getting some change from the other side as well.
yeah, I really love that because it's a question of we need to forgive ourselves, right? Forgiveness is really powerful and it's not for the other person because releasing the animosity is about forgiving ourselves for maybe being in this situation in the first place, forgiving ourselves for not getting it right in the marriage. But we are allowed to start over. And I think people forget about that. They feel so ingrained and entrenched with the conflict that they can't step outside of it. But that's where forgiveness comes in. And when you can forgive yourself, then you can communicate better with your co parent. And like, notice I didn't say forgiving your co parent because that can be really hard. And you're not forgiving them necessarily because they deserve it, but you're forgiving them for your kids. And you've got to acknowledge like your ex is still your child's parent. And our children also perceive that they are a blend of both of us, right? So if mom can't stand dad, then there's a part of me that mom can't stand. And that's a challenge for kids. So being able to release some of that, especially when you are with the kids, is really powerful.
Yeah, I've heard you mention several times the phrase letting go, and that's something I use a lot talking about co-parenting, as well as my business consulting and working with leadership. Right, is learning to let go, and I think forgiveness sometimes becomes a little bit of a buzzword. I think the real action part of that is letting go. When
Mhm.
you no longer carry it with you, we no longer whenever no longer shows up in a conversation, it never shows up in your mind that I'm doing this, but why he did that or she did that. Like learning to let go to where you know you can't change the past, but
Mhm.
what you can change the narrative we give about it, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's where the pain and suffering comes from, is living in the narration of the past, not the actual act. And
Yeah.
so learning
That's
to
a
let go of the views in our head about that thing is the hardest and the easiest thing to do to move forward.
Yeah, it's because we have one story that we tell, but there are a lot of facts and things that happen in relation to that story. And if we choose different parts of the experience to remember or to share, then we're completely rewriting the narrative, not changing what happens. I think people really need to understand that. One quote that has always stayed with me from a very long time ago is from Anne Lamott. She's an author, and she says, "Forgiveness is giving up the hope of having had a better past." So you got to forgive life for giving you life because tomorrow you're going to be able to go forward. And let's do that with a different attitude. And again, that's co-parenting because we got to let go of what went on before so that we can move forward with a different perspective.
100%. And it starts with just show how you show up and intentionality of how you want to work with your co-parent. And again, I think one of the best things to do, I mentioned earlier, is lean into, of course, create this intentionality that you are there to make this easy for all of us, the best for all of us. And if there's not a reason to say no, I'm always going to say yes.
So I love that even more because it just occurred to me that, so often in co-parenting, you're going with your reflexive response of no, or I need to think about it. And what you're suggesting is make that reflexive response yes. And it totally reframes everything.
It does, and it just shows the other person that you let go, right? It's an amazing thing when you start doing it. And again, this is something like I didn't do this right out of the way, like, but it's something that as I was writing the book and I've thought about, it, I've done podcasts. It's kind of like I mean, like, yeah, like I just say, of course now.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a conscious thing. I just like, yeah, let's say of course instead of yes or maybe. It just happened over time because we created this environment to where it just was understood that
Hmm.
we were going to allow it as long as there wasn't a reason. And one of the best places you can get to in a co-parent relationship is quite frankly where the divorce agreement, separation agreement doesn't matter anymore. Obviously, I'm not advising anyone to not
Right.
enter into legal things you have to, but the separation agreement, at least here in Maryland, is something you do before you get divorced, and that gets solidified in the divorce and with the custody and everything. But when you create that positive co-parenting relationship, it kind of goes out the window. And it be quite frankly, like someone say, aren't you worried about that from a legal standpoint? I was like, no, because we have a decade of communication where we each said yes. And it's
Yeah.
hard for neither one of us could ever go to a judge and say, this is what's happening, and not the other person not be able to say that's not true. We have a track record of texts, phone calls, emails, everything that we've done for each other. Obviously, I'm not worried about that, but her doing that or short about me, but like we have the track record because
Yeah.
we've done this for 10 years now, and no one could ever argue otherwise.
Well, what you're saying is you have neuroplasticity, right? You decided to do it differently. You created new patterns, you created new habits, and now it's on autopilot, the new habits, not the old ones. And that requires intentionality, which is a big word that you used. So, what's been the reception of people around you to this co-parenting secret?
So, so for our close immediate family, grandparents, etc., it's been great, right? It's my mom and her mom still talk on a weekly basis.
Mm,
So they've allowed us to stay close, and they've been very, very supportive. In the beginning, for outside of that circle, it was hard for people, right? It's weird. Um, it's sad, right? How weird it is that we can go to soccer games and sit next to each other and not fight.
yeah,
Some other things to mention, like so my ex-wife, her partner, her parents, and her uncles came to my wedding. Um, you know, just things like that happened. And sure, was it awkward for her partner because he didn't always quite get it? Yeah. But it allowed us to stay as a family, and it's a different family than we envisioned. But it did allow us to stay as a family, and little by little, I think people around us who were weirded out by it or confused by it started saying like, yeah, like they got it right? Like they're how they're doing it is a better way than what we've been doing for the past 30, 40, 50 years. And that's become a very common, divorce in relationships.
yeah. Yeah, I love that because the fact of the matter is that you're still a family. That's something you just said. Like whether you are married or not, you share children and that makes you a family. And it looks different than what the traditional Leave It to Beaver model might look like, but it doesn't make it any less of a family. And that's what is so powerful because so many people look at divorce as like breaking, and it's breaking of something, yes, but it's not destructive. It doesn't have to be destructive. That's really the message you have here.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine.
Right, right.
While we were still separated, I believe, because we were separated for 4 or 5 months living together before we got divorce was finalized. Her parents invited me to a family function that they were hosting, and because they knew what we're trying to build, and what they were with us on keeping that going. But the person that the event was for didn't like it,
Yeah.
and actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you're invited. I understand why they did, but you're not welcome, and I don't want you to come." And it broke my heart. I mean, I sat in my car and cried. I came in, I was pretty defeated. My ex-wife said, sensed it and asked what was going on, and I told her, and she's like, "Do you need some extra time, with Henry today? Like, I'm so sorry. That's not right. That's not what me and my parents want, but we have to honor it at the same time." I was like, I get it. And I just had to remind myself that that person wasn't the inner circle that we're relying on. The
Yeah.
people who were behind us, the people who are going to be involved in this process daily, weekly, monthly, whatever that is, we were all still committed. And I had to let that instance go away. I had to let go
Yeah.
of it and not and realize that that was a one off. And we were still committed and moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it was a one-off, and yet and each time that happened is a different one-off, right? Because you don't control their feelings, just like they don't control yours, and they're on a different page. So, really, really important stuff. So, we're just about getting close to the end of our really amazing interview. What would you say is the biggest piece of advice that you could give parents navigating co-parenting?
I'm going to go back to what we've talked about several times, which is learn to say, of course. I just
Mhm.
I believe in so much of its of how you as an individual is showing up intentionally
Mhm.
to be supportive and agreeable in what it can do for the other person to show the same thing. Again, even if you're not in the most respectful or communicative co-parent relationship, I believe that if you start showing up that way and start showing the other person how agreeable you can be, unless it's just someone who just doesn't have good morals or whatever it may be, they're going to respond similarly, right? It will be contagious, and regardless, even if it's not, you're going to see that you are living lighter, you're learning to let go, and you're going to be happier regardless.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what you're talking about is logical, but it's also science. We have mirror neurons. And so when someone's coming at us, we're going to come back at them. But if someone is actually being thoughtful and kind, then we're going to respond thoughtfully and kindly. And that's what this whole cycle is about, is creating a different dynamic. So with that, I want to thank you so much for joining. Of course. And I can you tell us how my audience can find you, can find your book? Give us the scoop.
Yep, there's a landing page for my book. Obviously, you can go to Amazon as well, but you can find the links on the coparentingbook.com. Then my personal brand page is jonbassford.com. Those are two of the best ways to reach me.
Okay, that's great. I'm so excited to have you and to learn more about the co-parenting secret. For my audience, thank you for being with us today, again on the Divorce Clarity Studio. I'm your host, Lisa Lisser, and you can find me at lzlcoaching.com. See you next time.